Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek.net's Future Imperfect, and I'm your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd. Well guys, we are coming to an end of our Star Trek Renegades series of interviews. We've talked with captains, we've talked with lieutenants, we've talked with pretty much everybody on this cast, and well, I got tossed this interview very, very recently, and you may have heard of this guy. He's done stuff like Dragon Ball Z, Full Metal Alchemist, tons of other stuff. He's actually produced his own Star Trek web series. If you haven't guessed who I'm talking about by now, I'm talking about Vic Mignogna. And, well, he's going to be starring in the upcoming Star Trek Renegades project, which is just coming to an end in terms of its Indiegogo campaign in the next couple of days. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to donate. I know as of right now, they're over $90,000. So hopefully they'll reach that $200,000 goal. Like I've said before, maybe someone's taking out a second mortgage on their house, so we'll have to wait and see. But without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Vic to the show.
Hi there, Mike. How are you?
I am doing remarkably well. Vic, thank you for taking time out of your retardedly busy schedule to come and speak with us.
Always good time to talk Star Trek, Mike.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been following your work for years, and it wasn't up until recently when I interviewed Grant Imahara that I found out you're this huge Star Trek nerd.
Oh my gosh, yeah, beyond what any normal human should be.
So, how did you get involved with Star Trek? And I guess we will tell the origin story of you and the Trek fandom before we talk kind of Renegades. Let's get some of the meat out of the way first, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, when I was 10 and 11 and 12 years old, I discovered the original series of Star Trek. It had only been off the air for a couple of years at that point, and it was in syndication, and I just fell in love with it. There was so much about the show that resonated with me, and I found myself coming home every day after school and sitting in front of the television from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock and watching the episodes and building my own little phasers and communicators and picking my own uniforms and even taking a cassette recorder and sitting it by the speaker of the television and recording the episodes on audio cassette, and then I would stick them under my pillow at night and listen to the episodes. So I basically memorized and digested Star Trek, the original series, when I was a little boy, and have loved it ever since. And it's been a huge part of my life when I was young, growing up, and now I'm actually producing my own web series called Star Trek Continues, where we've completely rebuilt all of the original sets, and I'm fulfilling my childhood dream of getting to play Captain Kirk. And we've got a lot of other great people involved, like Grant Imahara and Chris Doohan, and a lot of great people involved in the project.
So, when you got into the Star Trek fandom remarkably young, what was the culture like for being involved in it? Like, because the 60s and the 70s were a very different time in terms of being a kid. In fact, I'm rather jealous that you got a chance to grow up in sort of the golden age of nerd.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like to be a Trek fan back then? Because there weren't many conventions. I know that didn't come until, like, mid-70s, so to speak, and the show was only on in syndication. Like, did you connect with our kids?
To be honest with you, Mike, you're exactly right. I was a Trekkie. There was no such thing as Trekker. I was a Trekkie, and I would go to Star Trek conventions. My mom would take me to the Star Trek conventions, where I got the privilege to meet DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy and James Doohan and Michelle Nichols and all of these all the cast members when I was very young, and it was a really neat time. There wasn't the kind of, how do I say this? Being a nerd back then was not cool. It wasn't quite the same as it is now. And, so much of today's culture with movies and Comic-Cons and Big Bang Theory and cosplay, so many things have made being a geek or being a nerd so much cooler, so much kind of in vogue. But back then, you know, it was we were much more underground back then.
So when do you think things kind of changed? Because, like, as time went forward and the Star Trek movie came out in the early 80s and Star Wars had massive success in the late 70s, when do you think the culture shifted that we're like, hey, these guys are around and they're not all weirdos?
You know, I think it would be really hard to put my finger on when that shifted, to be honest with you. It would be difficult to put your finger on when it shifted. I think, to be honest with you, I don't think there was probably a specific time. It was a gradual shift. I think that the enormous success of Star Wars contributed a great deal to bringing sci-fi into the mainstream. Mm-hmm. And then other productions, Battlestar Galactica and the Star Trek feature films and Superman and you know, on and on it went. I think other features built, other productions built on the mainstream success that Star Wars enjoyed. And I just think over the years, little by little, the geek culture chipped away at that perception that geeks and nerds were weirdos that wore pocket protectors and you know, white shirts and floated pants and greased hair back and horn-rimmed glasses, and people started realizing that, you know, your friends next door and you know, people in your own family and people that you considered kind of cool anyway, people suddenly realized that they were big sci-fi and, you know, fans, and they were the very geeks and nerds that people had this funny impression of.
So as things started to change and Gene Roddenberry wanted to originally launch Star Trek Phase 2, which ultimately became TNG, as you started to grow up and see things evolve during the 80s and into the 90s, more or less what I would consider the best time for Star Trek, considering there was so many series on television at that time. Because you had such an interest in it, did you ever think you would get a chance to do anything with Star Trek, with acting or anything? Like, was that always a dream?
I never did, Mike. In fact, I have to be honest and say my love affair with Star Trek was entirely based on the original series. All of the subsequent series that came out, you know, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, all of the subsequent series, I kind of felt each incarnation of Star Trek got a little further and further away from whatever the magic was that made the original series so endearing and so wonderful. So I didn't have anywhere near the kind of passion and enthusiasm for the other series that I did for the original series. Okay. But I will say that I all along, I mean, I've been acting since I was very young. In fact, I would probably dare say it was my love for Star Trek at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old that got me interested in acting and making movies and doing special effects and building props. And those are things that I carried on throughout my entire life, but I never imagined that I would ever have the opportunity to actually be a part of any kind of a Star Trek production.
Huh. Now, here's a question, Vic, because I hear the passion that you have for the original series. I am starting to get into it, and I'm finding it very intimidating to get into the fandom for the original series. And I'd like to hear it from you, because you've obviously care about it so much. How would you sell the series to someone like me who comes from the Voyager era, so to speak?
Well, I think that's an easy sell, and I would say this. Star Trek is arguably the most successful, long-running franchise in television history. certainly in American television history. I would say there are very, very few rival franchises that I can think of that have had the impact on culture and have been such a huge shaper of pop culture and been around as long in as many incarnations as Star Trek did. And the easy sell that I would tell you is the original series is what started it all.
Now, are there any episodes that stand out in your mind as you must see these absolutely?
Oh, my gosh. Well, there were 79 in the original series, and, you know, there were dozens and dozens of fantastic episodes. Off the top of my head, I would say The Doomsday Machine, City on the Edge of Forever, Piece of the Action, Space Seed, my personal favorite, Requiem for Methuselah. There are a huge number of amazing episodes from the original series. And you know what made them so amazing is they addressed moral issues and ethical questions and social issues, and those kind of things are timeless, Mike. That's why the original series and Star Trek itself holds up so well through the decades, because the concepts, the human concepts, are so timeless that they translate to any generation.
Now, oh wow, I'm definitely going to have to... I think I've seen a Piece of the Action. Is that the one where they go back in time to the 1930s?
Well, no, it's not. They don't go back in time.
Or they find a planet.
They go to a planet that has adopted the culture of the gangsters of the 20s. And everybody, like, there are these mob bosses, and they put hits out on each other, and Kirk and Spock and McCoy, they kind of infiltrate the culture in order to, because they find out that the source of the contamination to the culture was actually a Federation ship that visited this planet 100 years earlier and left them with a whole bunch of books. And one of the books was about the gangs of the 20s, and this planet, which was very imitative in their culture, ended up adopting this book in much the same way as some cultures adopt the Bible or the Quran and build their entire culture around it. It was a great episode. The only Star Trek episode to ever win an Emmy Award, and arguably one of the best episodes ever made, was City on the Edge of Forever. And that was the one where McCoy gets accidentally injected with a drug that makes him go crazy, and he jumps through this portal on this planet that puts him back into the Depression era, the late 30s, and suddenly the entire Federation is gone because McCoy did something in history that changed history. And Kirk and Spock have to go back in time, try to locate McCoy, try to figure out what he did that changed history, and to put it right again. It stars Joan Collins. It was the only Star Trek episode to win an Emmy Award, and it is a brilliant piece of work.
Wow, I kind of want to see this now, actually, just because I've always heard about the episode and title, but I never knew what it was about. And
well, it was written by famed sci-fi author Harlan Ellison. So it is an absolute must-see. I encourage you to go and find it immediately.
It's
City on the Edge of Forever.
It's neat to be able to talk with old-school fans, Vic, like yourself, who really sell the series more so than other like people who are discovering it now. Now I see why people who are older really dig it and why it's so different from, say, the Voyager episodes or Star Trek Enterprise. Now,
right.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Vic, is the Star Trek Continues project that you were involved with. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, I would be more than happy to, Mike. I directed an episode for another fan group, Starship Farragut, a couple of years ago. And my college degree is in film, and I do a lot of shooting and directing and editing, and have for a long time. And the Farragut people asked me if I would direct an episode for them, and I said sure. So I did, and we really hit it off. We had a great time together, and an idea started forming in my mind, and that idea was this. I've seen a lot of fan productions, and they have strengths and weaknesses, but a lot of them have the same weaknesses. And without going into detail, I thought to myself, I would love to put together a fan production that picks up and continues right where the original series left off, and takes the production value and takes fan films to a whole new level, doing things to a quality level that had never been done before with Star Trek fan productions. There have been dozens of them, but a lot of them all have the same weaknesses. The people are not actors, so the acting is not as solid as it could be. The sets are limited. The lighting is not right. The storytelling is not strong. The editing and the pacing is not good. So many little things that all come together to make a project very, very good. And so I set out to form a production, cast the show, crew the show, and bring in a whole bunch of people that would take the production to a level that has never been done before. And so in January of this year, we shot our first premiere episode called Pilgrim of Eternity, which was actually a sequel to an original series episode called Who Mourns for Adonias. And we actually even got the actor who played the guest starring role 45 years ago to reprise his role in our episode.
Wow.
We shot the episode. I directed it. I wrote the story and directed it, and played Captain Kirk and edited the episode. And we premiered it at Phoenix Comic-Con in late May to a packed room of 4,000 people. And then it went online, and I'm very, very humbled and gratified to say that everybody is absolutely loving the episode. It feels, sounds, looks more like original Star Trek than anything that anybody else has accomplished to date. And we're actually gearing up right now in pre-production to shoot our next episode in late October.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And it's always nice to hear someone that wants to bring the more technical qualities to some of these fan productions, because with a professional background, it can look so amazing. And with the web tools to get it out to audiences now, and plus all the professional equipment available to ordinary people now, it's easy.
Exactly.
It's so much more accessible to produce content like this.
Exactly. And the people that I've brought into this production are exceptionally gifted professional people in their respective fields, but the common denominator is that we all loved Star Trek when we were young kids. So the chance to bring together our childhood passion with the skills that we've developed in production over the years is a great joy.
Now, where in terms of continuity does Star Trek Continues fall?
Star Trek Continues literally picks up immediately where the original series left off. In fact, I would like to encourage you and your listeners to go to StarTrekContinues.com, official Star Trek Continues on Facebook, and click on episodes. We actually made 3 little dramatic vignettes that we released as teaser trailers leading up to our first full episode. And the very first trailer that we released literally recapped and recreated the last 60 seconds of the last episode that was ever aired, Turnabout Intruder. And what happened, though, was we recreated the last 60 seconds, but where the original series ended, the last shot that you saw in the original series, you get to that shot in our teaser trailer, and it just continues without missing a beat. It just continues right on from where it left off, and our long-term goal would be to be able to do year 4 and year 5 of the 5-year mission, which they never did.
I gotta say, that makes me tremendously hyped for this. The fact that you guys cared enough to make it like that. I'm not gonna lie, that's actually really friggin' cool.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike, and I would love for you to check out on the internet. Go and check out our website and watch our episodes. I think you'll be blown away, as hundreds of thousands of other people have been already, by the production value. It looks exactly like original Star Trek. It feels and sounds exactly like original Star Trek.
Now,
and I think you'll be very very excited to see what we've accomplished.
I'll definitely be checking that out after the show. Vic, one of the next questions that I want to ask you as we start to kind of wind things down here is, I understand you've been asked to star in the newest Star Trek project, Star Trek Renegades, which has been running this Indiegogo campaign since I think the end of July or the beginning of July, and it ends on Friday.
Right.
And there's a tremendous pool of talent, which sounds remarkably like Star Trek Continues, bringing people with skills, or even people who've been involved in the original series, which they started from. So how did you get the phone call to be involved in this new one?
Well, actually, Mike, when you get out here to LA and you start talking about Star Trek and doing Star Trek related material, you find that it's a very small family of a lot of the same people, and the makeup people that are my makeup supervisors for Star Trek Continues are the makeup leads for Renegades, and people that are working in my costume area, in my costume department for Star Trek Continues, are working in Renegades, and I've become good friends with Tim Russ over the years, and Sky Conway, and Ralph Miller, who is the head of sound for Star Trek Continues, is also, I believe, possibly working on Renegades. So, point is, there's a lot of overlap, and I think that Tim and Sky and the different people involved in the production of Renegades saw what we had done with Star Trek Continues. They realized that I was a big fan, and also, an experienced, trained actor who also has, a fair amount of recognition from my own respective field of voice acting. And so I guess it seemed like a good fit, and I am extremely honored and excited to be a part of Renegade.
Now, I understand some of it's been kept under wraps. You probably can't tell us too much more about your character named Garrus, correct?
Yeah, I cannot say much about that at all at this point, but I can tell you that it's a very cool character, and I'm very excited to see how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's going to be different from seeing a darker Star Trek, sort of. It was described by Adrian Wilkinson to me as Black Ops meets Star Trek, so I kind of picture 24 but with phasers. So I gotta say, I'm really looking forward to seeing your work in this, Vic. I'm really looking forward to checking out Star Trek Continues. So if people wanted to find out more about what you're up to, Vic, where would they have to go? Well,
as I say, StarTrekContinues.com. That's pretty easy. Our website, plenty of information there. StarTrekContinues.com. Also, I'd like your listeners to know that in the next couple of weeks, probably, we're going to be launching a Kickstarter to help fund Star Trek Continues. We did not ask for any money for the first episode. We funded it ourselves because I felt strongly that we needed to prove to everybody what we were capable of doing before we asked them to give to it. So now that we've proven it, they can see for themselves the quality of what we're capable of. Hopefully we'll get a good response on our Kickstarter, and that will be in the next couple of weeks. Official Star Trek Continues on Facebook. And for me personally, VixWorld.net, and my My fan club website is www.risenbullrangers.com. RISEMBOOL Rangers.com. I'm also on Twitter, so people can follow me there and join in, be a part of the family, and we'd love to have you.
Awesome, Vic. Well, thank you, like I said, once again, for taking time out of your remarkably busy schedule to come hang with us today on Future Imperfect.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well, guys, that was my interview with Vic Mignogna. You've heard his work with Star Trek Continues. Really excited to see what he's going to bring to Star Trek Renegades. It's going to be different from the original series. Like I said, 24 but with phasers. Could be amazingly kick-ass. Only a couple of days left to donate, so hopefully we'll bring Vic back to talk about Star Trek Continues Episode 2, whatever it's called. And, so hopefully you guys will check those out. Like I said, StarTrekContinues.com, Star Trek Renegades on Indiegogo. Check the link below to find out more information about that. Well, guys, for Future Imperfect here on ThisWeekInGeek.net, I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd saying, live long and prosper.